last topic of this chapter, educating the native, civilizing the native and educating the nation. Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, it was nominated with the Nobel Prize for his famous creation of a Gitanjali. Gitanjali. For his book Gitanjali, he awarded with the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize. So as we discussed, the Rabindranath Tagore, he always the dreams for the educational institutions where the children would be learned from the doing, learning by doing as per their necessities and needs, for which he founded as a Vishwa Bharati school at Shanti Niketan, which means as the abode of peace. Abode of peace. Am I audible? So thank you. Rabindranath Tagore, he felt that the students should be kept away from all the luxurious that life which was as initiated by the Britishers. So as per the ideology of Rabindranath Tagore's philosophy, a student, it should be as kept away from the all luxuries or relaxes. It should be as a learn as per their will. Child should learn from their will and the necessities. Rabindranath Tagore wanted to make students aware of the richness of Indian traditions. So to fulfill his dreams, he set up an open school about 100 kilometers away from the Calcutta at Shanti Niketan. Shanti Niketan, his school. In that school at Shanti Niketan, he emphasized on a self-motivation. He emphasized on a self-motivation and fostering intellectual curiosity. Curiosity of children. A child, it should learn as per their pace, means as per their needs. A child should learn from nature as per their pace, P-A-C-E, pace and needs. So rather than the competitive excellence, Rabindranath Tagore emphasized over the learning by doing. Learning by doing. So classes except those requiring a laboratory were held outdoors whenever the weather permitted. What started off as a school ultimately became as the Vishwa Bharati University at Shanti Niketan. On that ideology of a self-learning, self-realization, on that philosophy, the Shanti Niketan in stage, it became as the Vishwa Bharati University in Calcutta. Vishwa Bharati University. Vishwa Bharati University in Shanti Niketan. Rabindranath Tagore thought that a child should learn as per their needs, as per their speed, as per their necessities. So a child should learn from nature. Learn from nature. According to the Rabindranath Tagore, a child should learn only as a dead subject in which as their interest is there, as per their necessities and the interest. A child should learn about only that particular, so learning by doing from nature. A child should learn by doing from nature, not as the theoretical. It emphasizes over a practical knowledge of the subjects. Practical knowledge of subjects. Clear? This was our chapter, Civilizing the Native and Educating the Nation. Any queries? Any queries? Education is an all-around development of an individual. On this philosophy, the number of social reformers work to and emphasize over the promotion of promotion over education during as a colonial period. When Britishers, Pragati, this is a Wood's dispatch, WOOD''S, Wood's dispatch, 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 a commission called by the Britishers in 1854, which analyzed the complete scenario of Indian education and suggested their recommendations related with the education. He suggested that the education it should be as a change on a behalf of a certain issues. For example, as per the recommendations of a Wood's dispatch, each and every district it should be as controlled and managed by the education standard by the education officer. So district education officer is responsible for the proper functioning of all the elementary, middle, senior, secondary, college, all type of the education in a district. Second, as a compulsion of a introduction of English in a schools with collaboration with the one regional language. Two of the languages it will be as a taught to the as a English with the regional language. It was as a compulsion during the colonial period to learn by all the kids, all the children. Third, as the universities were set up in a presidencies, Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, newer presidencies. So those presidency cities were developed and evolved at the time of a colonial period. These were used for a location of the universities. Location of universities. Clear? Fourth one, as a in a Wood's dispatch recommendation. Wood's dispatch recommendation. The each and every school it will be introduced in newer subjects, mathematics, sciences, social sciences, and environmental sciences with relation to the languages. Next one, as the Wood's dispatch recommended that the education system it will be not through as the older traditional method. Now as the education it will be work to the kindergarten, elementary, middle, secondary, senior secondary, college education, and university education. Proper pattern of education emphasized over a Indian subcontinent. So any questions? Anybody? Any questions related with the chapter? Nai Talim, yes, Nai Talim, it was as a new technique of education which was based upon Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy. Gandhiji propounded that the Indian education, India it has possessing the rich literature and a glorious past. On the behalf of that literature which is available in India in a form of the epics, Vedas, Upanishads, and other religious books, it should be as a used as a base for the imparting as a education among the individuals. Education among individuals, for which as a Gandhiji propounded a concept of a Nai Talim, new education. Nai means new, Talim as a new education, new technique of education. Earlier, as a before of a British age, only religious knowledge was imparted by the people. But during the colonial period, Britishers they emphasized over the reading and writing, theoretical aspect. But Gandhiji in a Nai Talim, through the Nai Talim, he profoundly emphasized over the practical knowledge. A child, it should be as a learn about the practical knowledge. That's why the Gandhiji he favored that every child, it should be as learn any one of our crafts, any one craft through which it will be as a self-employed in future, neither dependent on others. On same philosophy, Rabindranath Tagore also following the same philosophy in which he, any other question? They just concentrated towards as a West Bengal, not in other parts of the country. Yes, anybody? Any questions? No questions? Okay. So let's we discuss regarding as a exercise. Raise your hand. Samil, yes. What term you will use in context of a William Jones?
Yes.
Yes, Samil.
Orientalist.
What term
Sir,
you will
Orientalist.
use in context of a William Jones?
Sir, Orientalist.
But during the colonial age, it was known as Anglics, which favored the British culture. They favored the British culture, neither as an Indian culture. Clear? So the second question. Second question is a Rabindranath Tagore. Yes, Kritika? Rabindranath Tagore. Send your messages.
Learning in the natural environment.
Mahatma Gandhi. Critical, very good. Critic of a English education system. English education system. Critic of English education system. And last हमें नहीं आता. Yes, clear? Pathshala, which whatever has remaining, gurus. Gurus. So next one, question number 2. True or false? Olankit, Hariom, raise these hands. So they will answer, sir, first. They will answer at first. So the first statement is that James Mill was a severe critic of the Orientalist. James Mill, true, because it was an Anglic. James Mill was an Anglic. He thought that British age as the glorious age, before of the Britishers as a dark age in India. Dark age in India. So the statement is correct. That statement is correct, in which marked as a James Mill was a severe critic of a Orientalist because he was a Anglic. Second statement is that the 1854 Wood's dispatch, the dispatch on education was in favor of English being introduced as a medium of higher education in India. Higher education in India. This is as the true. Again true, very good. Jabji Sawmill, true. This is a true, correct, because through the Wood's dispatch, Britishers, they introduced the English in the Indian subcontinent. English in Indian subcontinent. Third statement is a Mahatma Gandhi thought that promotion of literacy was the most important aim of education. Most important aim of education. False. False. Because according to the Mahatma Gandhi, the most important aim of education is a self-realization. Self-realization. Avdi, this is as the false, self-realization. So a child, it should be as a learn about the practical knowledge about the subject. Practical knowledge, neither as a theoretical. That's why the Mahatma Gandhi condemned the British education system. Fourth statement, Rabindranath Tagore felt that children ought to be subjected to the strict discipline. False. Strict discipline means on from with their speed as per their necessities. So Rabindranath Tagore recognized that the children are not unfinished adults, but have to be seen in their own rights, necessities, and pace and demand. A child should learn as per their needs and their demands. Clear? Now the next question number 3 is why did William Jones feel the need of a study Indian history, philosophy, and law? And law. Because William Jones felt that the study of Indian history, critic means activity. Clear? For example, the Mahatma Gandhi, he criticized the British education system, in which mostly as knowledge was imparted in a form of a theoretical. Neither they emphasize over a practical knowledge. Neither emphasize over a practical knowledge. Clear? So William Jones felt that the study of Indian history, and law would not only help the British learn from Indian culture, but it would also help Indian history, law, philosophy, not only help the Britishers, learn from Indian culture, but it would also help Indians to rediscover their own heritage and understand the glorious past. And Indians learn about their glorious past, for which as a William Jones paid that we have to make others aware. William Jones, he discovered the ancient text. William Jones, first point, William Jones discovered Indian texts, Indian ancient texts, understand it and translated it into the foreign languages. Why? Because of its importance. The rich culture knowledge which was present in Indian literature, it should be as a world, it should be as aware about such information. Second, need to rediscover the past. Jones felt that India had attained its glory in the ancient past, but had subsequently declined. Third point, he thought that in order to understand Indians, Jones thought that in order to understand Indians, he thought that in order to understand Indians, it was necessary to discover the sacred and legal texts that were produced in the ancient period. Fourth one, Jones had a deep respect for ancient cultures. William Jones had a deep respect for ancient cultures of India and rest of the world. India and the Western world means Europe. India and the rest of the world. Clear? Rest of the world. Next question. Why did James Mill and Thomas Macaulay think that European education was essential in India? European education is essential for India. So James Mill and Macaulay, these were the Anglics. Who criticized the Orientalists. They criticized the Orientalists and their vision of learning. James Mill and Thomas Macaulay. Thought that education should be useful and practical. Education should be useful and practical. And Indians should be made familiar with the advances being made in the rest of the world. So what developments which are occurred in the rest of the countries of world, such developments, it should be familiar to the Indians, for which these two were Thomas Macaulay and James Mill. They criticized the Orientalists. Orientalist. According to James Mill, he criticized the Orientalist vision of learning. He criticized the vision of Orientalists, vision of learning of Orientalist. Second one, the education should provide useful and practical knowledge to the students. Education should provide useful and practical knowledge to the students. Third, the knowledge of East. The knowledge of East means Eastern countries. Knowledge of East is full of errors and unscientific, whereas the ideology of Thomas Macaulay, according to the Thomas Macaulay, Oriental learning, it was not based upon a practical use. Oriental learning, it was not based upon practical use. Second, he emphasized the need to teach the English language. Third, he saw Indians as the uncivilized. Thomas Macaulay thought that Indians as uncivilized, that needed to be the civilized, for which as Britishers came to India. Indians are uncivilized, that needed to be the civilized, for which the Britishers came to India. Fourth one, the English education is better because it would allow Indians to read Western literature, to read world's one of the best or finest literature, Last point, it would also make them aware about the development in Western science and philosophy. It would also make them aware about the developments in Western science and philosophy. Western education, it would allow the Indians to aware about the Western sciences and philosophy. Clear? Next question is, why did Mahatma Gandhi want to teach children handicrafts? So why? First reason, why do the Mahatma Gandhi favor that a child, it should be as a learn about the crafts, So the first, if people are allowed to work with hands, learn a craft and know how different things operated, this would develop their mind and their capacity to understand. I'm repeating, as if the people are allowed to work with hands, learn a craft and know how different things operated, this would develop their mind and their capacity to understand phenomena, capacity to understand things. Second point, it would develop a person's mind as soul. Knowledge about the handicrafts, it develop a person's mind and soul, S-O-U-L, soul. Third, Western education focused on reading and writing rather than the oral knowledge. Rather than the oral knowledge, which do not count as education. According to the Mahatma Gandhi, Western education focused on reading and writing, reading and writing, reading and writing rather than the oral knowledge, which do not count an education. And education. Fourth point, he thought that Gandhiji thought that Western learning, Western education, Western education did not develop individual's mind, individual's mind. So that's why he emphasized over the knowledge. He emphasized over the knowledge about the handicrafts. Next question. Why did Mahatma Gandhi think that English education had enslaved Indians? Enslaved impact over the Indians, in which you can mark about the how it affected as a minds of the individuals, how a Western education make the Indians as inferior comparatively the Britishers. How does the Western education it impact over the Indian art and culture, which is as the glorious comparatively the Western culture. In this question, you can mark about the how the some of the Indians which favored even not only as Indians, the Britishers also favored that the Indian art, culture, and literature. In this question, you can also mark about the how Western civilization destroyed the pride of the Indian art and culture. Clear? Art and culture. So as the ideology of Mahatma Gandhi, he favored that Indians rediscover their glorious past and literature through the sense of dignity and self-respect. And with these questions, question number 3, 4, 5, 6, you have to attempt one more question. What were the recommendations of Wood's dispatch? You have to note one more question. What were the recommendations suggested by the Wood's dispatch in 1854? Wood's, WOOD', Wood's dispatch in 1854. Clear? So it means the total number of questions are 3, 4, 5, 6, and one more question. Total 5 questions are there. Submission the copies, it should be as ready till Saturday. Clear? Yes, bache? Kritika, send your message in a chat box. You can send your queries in a chat box. Yes. Such suggestions and recommendations were the changes. What expected changes from the side of Charles Woods in relation to the Indian education? These were the included under the recommendations. Sixth question. You have Western education make Indians as an inferior. Western education promoted as a Western culture and neglected the Western Indian culture. Western education depriving the Indian practical knowledge rather as a theoretical. Clear? So this much for today.